Velkomin í Rauðum Raunveruleika. Þetta svona þáttaröð 2, getur maður sagt. Við erum að fara aftur í lofti núna eftir jólafrí. Gleðum með að vera komin aftur og í kvöld erum við með 3 mjög góða gesti úr Samninganefnd Eflingar. Og þátturinn verður á ensku því að þau tala ekki íslensku ennþá og þau hafa verið að taka þátt í þessum samningaviðræðum sem eru búin að vera eiga sér stað núna síðustu vikur og daga og við ætlum að fá svolítið að heyra í þeim og fá innsýn inn í hvernig það er að vera virkur meðlimir Eflingar. Hi, thank you very much for coming here, Sæþór, Reynaldo, and Melissu. So, you've been active in Efling for a couple of years, most of you now. You've been in the negotiating committee, going to the meetings with Samninganefnd.
Yeah.
Have most of you been active long in Efling as a member?
For me, it was my time that for last year, that was the first time that I have a really push for active in Efling.
Mm-hmm.
And since a lot of people also really wanted to have this kind of group, then it really makes me become more stronger and more active.
Mm-hmm. And when you are like creating the conditions, you're laying to Samninganefnd. Everyone is involved in the creation of those conditions that you lay forward.
Really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we took a class from a labor organizer whose her concept is that by involving people directly in the negotiation for their contract, this can break through the political apathy of the day, where lots of people have ideas, but they feel the system doesn't work, there's no democracy. You know, politicians and leaders will promise one thing, but then once they have power, they won't do it. So getting people to even try or show up or vote or petition is very difficult. But if you ask someone, are you paid enough? Or is your boss treating you well? Then they have something to say. So if you bring people directly into the negotiating room and they can witness the disrespect and the corruption, it creates this even more radical concept. So we took a class before creating the committee, and then most of the people that were in the class joined the committee, but we had an open call. And it's a lot of work, so we wanted people who were going to come and spend that time and be interested. So anyone could have joined from Efling, and the ones who did are on it now.
Mm-hmm. And they've been prepared. You went through classes, and you have like a strategy that you guys are pulling together and going with a united front, you know, toward at the table.
So whereas a lot of times it will be the leader, an economist, and a lawyer who steer everything. Mm-hmm. Instead, we have them in the room, and they give us advice and history and experience from past negotiations. But if we're like actually deciding on a number or a yes/no, they aren't the ones who decide. It's those of us in the room doing a vote or writing down numbers or breaking into small groups.
Yeah.
And do you think is it like are the members respected? Their opinions are accounted for. Like the leaders, they just take a sidestep when members are deciding if they want to do this or that.
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I think that obviously everybody in the room has their preference for how they would like things, but by the end of it, we almost always vote unanimously on things through just like discussing things, the pros and cons, and you know, the lawyer or the economist, they might have input like, okay, well, we actually maybe can't do this because of this law here, and then we regroup, we talk about it, and then, you know, we make our decision, and that's really the most that we are like steered. You know what I mean? It's not like they're saying, you guys have to agree to do this, and now you're locked in this room until you do this thing.
What we want, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
What's really good in our group right now is we have some kind of democratic way, and if you have some ideas, you can raise up your hands and can have a debate if you wanted to. Then after all of that things, we have to agree one goal for that, and then that's it. So it seems like that if you really have a good point on why you are raising that question or something, or any suggestion for that, then that's really good.
Yeah.
As long as it is good for the group.
Exactly, yeah. I know.
And I mean, we still
Oh.
get very good leadership from Solveig.
Yeah.
And so it's like a blend between kind of setting a general direction or an agenda or providing experience from past times. But also, I remember once someone asked, like, can we change this now? We had already been discussing, and now it was at the end to agree on a specific thing. Can we change it? And she said, we could do anything we want. You guys can
Yeah.
vote right now to,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
totally cut it in half. But like, I would suggest that we stick with what we've been talking about. And we're all going, yeah, that's pretty, yeah,
Yeah.
agreed. Mhm.
So you have this active conversation and
Yeah,
everybody's
exactly.
participating and so
Yeah.
on. Do you think, like these, the other unions now that have written under these contracts, that many people consider to be a wage decrease when you account for inflation? And we have all these price hikes going on and a bunch of things, and some taxes being increased. Do you think if those labor unions had an active negotiating committee like you guys do you think those contracts would have been signed so quickly?
No.
I don't think so,
Mhm.
because for me, in our union, it would be, I would say it would be better. It would be better compared to other unions because we have the team, we have the negotiating committee, which is so very active, and if ever there is some kind of negotiation and then they wanted to pass it easily, no, it's not. We have to debate it first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
So-
the
Yeah.
number we pushed across the table, it was literally only members who will work under an Efling contract that wrote numbers down. Not
Yeah.
Solveig, not the economists, not the lawyers, like only those of us who will. And I don't know for 100% certain, but I'm 99.99% certain that that's not how the numbers from the other unions came. The
Exactly.
leaders and the economists who have a mandate from their union to do it, they didn't do anything wrong or illegal, but their numbers came from them and they're not going to be working under it. So the first time that the members of the other unions got to see and influence that number, it was only the final, do I approve this or not? But it had already been crafted, tentatively agreed upon between SA and the negotiators, whereas we made our number. So that's why it's higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you made it in a democratic process.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
we did even discuss when we were talking about the numbers, like how this is compared to, at that time, what the prospective inflation would be. And now the inflation is actually even higher than what we had estimated with The Economist. So, you know, these aren't just numbers that like, oh, we want a, you know, $1 million kroner a month raise. It was like very realistic, like this is what the minimum that we can live on. This is what we would be happy with, and then it was like 3 numbers, right? And then the top number was like, okay, we'll be quite happy if we get this. And I think,
And it was
Yeah.
stronger because it came from us because,
Yeah.
like, for my job, I have to go to the grocery store 3 times a week. And then in my other job, I have to go to Biko more than 3 times a week. And I've watched what happens to screws and lumber and meat and lettuce and tomatoes. And, you know, I know what inflation is just from my real life.
Yeah.
I don't need to have necessarily economists put it together, but we also
Yeah.
get that. So the idea that these other contracts have kept up with purchasing power, I know that it's a lie, and then I've also seen in numbers that it's a lie.
yeah.
Now, for me, I was just a little bit surprised why other unions have really easily get into an agreement, when in fact there must be some kind of a roll call or something, a debate for that. And then we're glad that in our union we've been trying to be fair and make it into a real negotiation, something like that.
Yeah, seems to me that this should be the way forward. I think other unions should really take Efling as an example of how they can improve their work.
Yeah, exactly.
I
But-
would never want to do it another way. And like, you know, when I hear from the other people I know in other unions, their only input was that final yes or no. And if I imagine myself in that position compared to this, I'm like, I have so much input and power here with everyone else in the union compared to just Okay.
A binary, yes, no at the end of the process that you can, it's
And
kind of
if you
strange.
and like we know what saying no means because of the class and the experience. Someone else, given the vote for the other union, like VAFE, SGS, when their members got a vote, the amount of them who knows what happens if they voted no, they don't all know what that means. Does that mean I don't get any contract? Will the next one be lower? Will the next one be better? If you've never been told how the contract negotiation works, you don't even necessarily know what you're voting for.
I've been seeing some. I want to address this, like a bunch of comments in the social media sphere, where people are accusing the negotiation committee of Efling to not be negotiating for their own pay. So they're saying like none of these people are going to be on the wages that they are negotiating for. Is this true?
These two are.
I think we are, most of us, I would say,
Yeah.
in the committee are working on those wages. Yeah.
These are your wages. You're
Yeah,
not
these are
negotiating for
wages.
someone else.
But also the way
Only.
it goes, we're going to be negotiating, I work for Reykjavik City, we're going to be negotiating those in March. And historically, they've been very heavily based on what was won on previously with SI. It very often follows, like, that's what the win was there, it's going to be close to that here. So if it were settled for something really, really low, because I don't have any input now, when it comes my turn for my actual contract, I'm kind of bound in the same way that they're trying to bind us with this other contracts from SGS and VAFE that we had no say whatsoever in crafting. I'm like, okay, well, why would I want to agree to that? So, and then again, it's also who is willing to come and show up. So like I'm, even if it's not my direct contract, I have solidarity with the people who are under it, and I'm the one who's coming and looking at the slides and participating in the small groups, writing the numbers down, and had 500 more people from Efling from the private market showed up, they would also get a voice. So like sometimes you can't just complain on Facebook or to your friends, you have to like begin to take an active participation, and then the people who do are the ones who get to have a voice.
So it's not true that most of you are negotiating for your own contracts, and even if you weren't, and in some cases you aren't, but it sets the precedent for how your eventual contracts are going to be now.
Yeah.
And if we took out everyone from the contract committee who is not on the private market, we would have fewer people, fewer voices, because sometimes someone's sick or they can't get a ride, or their kid's sick, or they got a car accident, and so this way we have enough to always be a good group, to stand together, make our voices heard, literally.
And I also seen one comment of the social media that why is it that Efling really wanted to have a more increase, and they don't realize that the 35,000 kroner is really not good. It's not good enough. So we make it higher because we know that the inflation eats it. So why is it that other people say you are too much? You are thinking about your own, maybe your own good. What about the situation of our economy in this country? Something like that. No.
Thinking about the whole thing.
Yeah,
But
we're
it's
thinking
also
about the whole thing.
Very disrespectful. When I used to work in a different career, and I had to negotiate my salaries on my own, and there were times when the person I was negotiating with didn't want to pay me that much, and we had a back and forth, but there wasn't this idea that I didn't deserve it. How dare you ask for more money? Because I was coming with like a rare skill in a high demand industry, and this was contract negotiation. And so I see a lot of classism and deep disrespect, which is really ridiculous with how hard Efling jobs require you to work, that it's reduced our lifespans, just Efling women, working class women of Iceland. We're asking for what we believe we deserve, and then when someone goes, you don't deserve that much, it's an insult to the work that we do, our self-respect. Like, we're the ones who know how hard our jobs are and what our bills are, and if we can pay or not. And very obviously we're not asking to be moved up to lawyer and doctor salary level.
I mean, the thing
That's
is,
next year.
is like, so I think that in a lot of ways, negotiating opposition comes in with this sort of idea of, well, it's our bottom line that we're worrying about. Our bottom line, we are also worried about, but our bottom line means feeding ourselves and our children, paying for our rent. Their bottom line does not mean that.
No.
So it's much more personal as
Yeah.
well.
Their bottom line is like a profit margin. And,
Exactly.
keeping that at like a 30% or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, instead of dipping into that. I'm really saddened by some of the things you see on social media, like people are calling Solveig Stalinist, saying she's dictatorial and that it's just a sham, you know, but then you see how it is. You have this active democratic union where people's participation is respected and a vital part of the entire process. So
But it also displays an ignorance of history because these epithets are used every time. You know, Bernie Sanders was a Stalinist, and Jeremy Corbyn was a Stalinist, and before that, Jesse Jackson was a Stalinist, and Gudmundur Yaki was a Stalinist. Like, anyone who, like, continues forward and doesn't accept compromise and excuses, someone needs to grab, like, the first epithet in their mind that means I don't like, and this is why sometimes they'll blend political ideologies, like you're a Hitler Stalin, and I'm like, but they were, ooh, okay.
yeah. People talk about like a spring in the labor movement, vor í verko, it's called in Icelandic, that we've been seeing this resurgence in the labor movement with Efling and with Vafr Ragnar, and people hoped Vilhjálmur Birgisson with Starfsgreinasambandið and more. It seems to me that after these short-term contracts that SGS and Vafr and more have signed, that Solveig and Efling, you guys are the last foothold in this spring in the labor movement currently. But Samtök atvinnulífsins, Halldór Benjamin, like you, the last proposal you laid forth to them, that wasn't crazy. You were like...
The first one wasn't crazy.
No. You were only a couple, like 10,000 kroners above what SGS and Vafr did, right? But your door, the door was just shut on your face.
Yeah. And the thing is they've had this constant narrative of they are saying that they want to negotiate, and if we can bring something forward that they can work with that is within their cost assessment of the SGS contract, that they will happily work with us on it. And we haven't seen that in action. And we came forward with our offer last time, which was well within the cost assessment that we could figure out. And
You even,
There's
right.
no willingness to negotiate. There was someone pointed out that when we brought our demands to the Sveitafélag last time, Reykjavik and Kópavogur, that when we first came, they still didn't want to agree and thought it was crazy and too much and we're too radical. But every time that we met, they would like give a little bit, and then it was actual negotiating, even though they thought it was crazy the whole time. No, we could never pay that. There was movement. It was real negotiation. And I've done negotiations before. I know what they look like. This was not that. This was a child that does not want to eat broccoli, and there's someone there behind their shoulder keeping them from you, making them have to eat their broccoli. It was just a raw power game, and they have a lot.
Now
Yeah,
they're saying
and-
that... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. For me, actually, if you say about negotiation, there must be two persons or two sides, opposite sides of it. But in our case, we are the one who are really negotiating with them. And on their side, they don't. Because they've always been asking that, okay, this is our demands for you, this is our offer for you, nothing else, nothing more.
Yeah.
And then we've been having 3 times offering to them from the start. We've been having a 160,000 kron, 167,000 kroner,
Over 3
and
years.
after that we are lowering that to 57,000 kroner, and then again we have to have a 40,000 plus 15,000 kroner, and then all they've got is no, we don't accept that. You should have to agree with our demands, with our offer.
Why do you think it is? Like, because it sounds to me that you are being very reasonable. You're going,
Yeah.
you're
It's
trying
a
to
power
meet them in
game.
the
They're trying to
middle
break
and
us.
stuff.
We
Yeah.
put 4 legally, completely, like, filled out contracts that if, when we met, they said, okay, we agree with this, we would have literally signed them right there and sent them to the whole union to vote on. Four different ones, and they brought 0. No actual offers. It was always like, what you're asking for is too much. No, we want you to be fully broken and come in to, like, just be willing to accept what we then craft once you've said, okay, we're broken and we'll take
Yeah.
what you decide is okay.
While also saying, but we want to negotiate with you. It's not.
Yeah.
To real quick go back to Voriverko, I would not say that we're the only ones standing, because this is a very, it's revolution, radical, whatever. Changes in politics are always very kind of messy and clumsy, and mistakes are made. So I think that the amount of energy within Iceland to correct how the welfare system and the school and hospitals and wages for the low class, there's still a ton of energy, even within Vafr, SGS, the other places. And you need to seize upon when you get good leaders and moments in time to negotiate contracts to build on it. But, you really can't destroy it just by bribing or pushing down on a few people. So I kind of see more our job to show that you don't actually have to fold under this pressure. It isn't insurmountable. You have to have like a level of endurance, and by having lots of people with you, that because we know this isn't crazy. We know what our labor is worth. So when they try this gaslighting, because it's not third hand, it's not going through Solveig and then to us. It's literally, you could watch as Halldór Benjamin would try and sell some kind of lie, but that was directly about our lives, and we weren't buying it, and he's kind of realizing that he's looking around trying to say that purchasing power has never been higher, and we're all going,
Yeah.
and he's like kind of wilting under the...
Yeah.
And the thing is, before having a decision of what will be the possible or exact amount of our offer, we have some kind of statistics. We have an economist, Stefan. She's been doing a lot of research on what will be the real offer, and then we discuss it before we are going to submit that on proper negotiation. So we really have a good, some kind of democratic way in getting all those things.
And with numbers, you can have, like, Samninganefnd has kind of like a pet financial mercenary on loan. I forget where he comes from, but he's not a permanent employee. And they've created like glossy slides and graphs that somehow show that this framework offer is super good and purchasing power is up and housing's more affordable. But these numbers can be so complicated and have so many ways that you can really kind of make a graph that says what you want. And so I personally don't trust the person I'm negotiating with to tell me if the house is good or the car works or anything. I want an independent person to look at it. And so having someone that I can trust to lay out what purchasing power has done, or what housing costs, or what rent has been doing over the years is very useful. And we do that before every single thing. And if we ever see something, like we started negotiating before the SGS contract was ratified. And so after it was a thing, we needed to see what does this actually mean? What does it change? And what does it change for Efling employees specifically? We got to have our own private presentation of these numbers from someone that we trust instead of someone that we didn't.
The specialists from
Yeah.
the capitalists.
By the way, that graph I showed to my friend who works for The Economist, who has worked for Forbes. She, we know each other through economic stuff because I was an econ student. We looked at that graph that SA gave us and we were laughing about it. She works for not left-wing publications, and she was saying it's as if that they wanted to show you that they weren't poor, that you weren't poor without any regard for data. These graphs were just insane that they gave us.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
I can imagine this might work better if these data are being presented to just the labor leaders and they're
Whose-
like a little
whose
committee.
salary it won't be.
Mhm,
Yeah.
Exactly. While Halldór Benjamin telling this to you guys who live on these wages, it's just apparently false for you. Obviously false
Yeah.
because of your lives. I have a little theory about why Halldór Benjamin is absolutely being firm on not negotiating with you guys. A lot of people seem to think, Halldór Benjamin included, that Solveig Anna always wanted to go for a strike. But what you're telling me here is that you made concessions, you tried to meet them, and you tried to make a contract.
Yeah.
But I think Halldór Benjamin, the reason he cannot even give you a small leeway at all is because that would give too much credibility to your movement. So they're seeking right now, in my estimation, to just keep you down as much as they possibly can.
It's for sure that, but also there's a great English word, projection. He was never intending to negotiate.
Yeah.
He is telling on himself. There was not one day when he was ready to actually do contract negotiation. So like this is him projecting his sins on someone else.
Absolutely, you made big concessions. You came in there.
Imagine we've been having meetings for almost 22 meetings.
Yes, 20.
Before we have real meetings with the SR, we still have meetings from October, November until it's just.
We met ESA 8 times.
8 times.
Yeah.
4
Really?
before the Rikisat Samira and 4 after the visa.
Yeah.
So it's really, I don't know if what's their mind, if are we not serious enough? Do you
No,
think we are not serious enough? No.
But and it shows, for example, some of the other people who have already settled, both Halldór Benjamin and the other union leaders, they implied that they had already put in a lot of work. And for someone who's met many more times than that, yes, it is work, but I'm not like, I've met so many times now I want to give up. Like this is what it is, and I'm volunteering. Like Halldór's paid almost 5 million a month, and the other union leaders are all paid more than $1 million a month, and some of them are stacking leadership fees on top. So like to meet a couple times, sometimes for 8 or 10 hours in a row, like I just don't have any sympathy, especially as someone who works an Efling job, that this is somehow that I should give you like extra credit that you sat in a room with free coffee for a few times. Like that's your job.
On astronomical wages as well. Yeah, it really is outrageous how they try to frame it very often. Completely ridiculous. Do you feel optimistic about the coming months?
Yeah.
Is the movement unified? Are you meeting often and ready for what's to come?
Yeah, we are so very optimistic, and we've been doing a lot, and we go for it.
I'm optimistic that we are going to get a good contract for our members, and especially watching in the U.S. and in the U.K. and even here around Iceland, there are so many people that I know that feel a sense of like malaise or apathy, like that they have so many problems that they perceive that they would like to work on, but feel that they have no tools or connection to do anything about it. And I don't feel like that. Like it's going to be difficult, and I know the most powerful people in Iceland are on the other side of the equation, but I don't feel powerless or without a project. And so like that's, when so many people don't have that feeling, it's very...
It's a huge win and a progression.
I'm also optimistic. I think, I've been a part of quite a few movements when I was in the States, like political organization movements or protests, and I've never been a part of, never seen a more like unified group of people, and like solidarity is everything. So I'm very optimistic.
But we still have some propaganda movement outside there that maybe you'll be failed in your goal. But since we are so united in our community, in our committee, I think we can conquer and overcome all these things.
But that's also part of why we're meeting so often. Because like I remember, but me and Solveig, we were sharing how at a meeting that the night before we had gone to bed so frustrated about something, we were just like tearing our sheets into pieces, and but then because we got to come together and we were saying that to each other and felt heard and having some good food and talking, and this is what boosts you back up. It isn't a project of one, because none of us have laser eyes. We need to like meet back and share our troubles or build on our dreams, or like, is this unrealistic? And all of us are going, absolutely not. We know it's not, but it gives you energy.
Yeah, especially like when the media and the representatives of Samtök Atvinnulífsins and so on are trying to gaslight people or trying to frame things in a skewed way to further their narrative. It's very important to be able to have somebody who can tell you, no, you're not. It's not true. It's not true. Exactly like if you're being tormented by a narcissist. And he's gaslighting you. You need someone to be able to tell you. No, you are sane. He's the one. Yeah.
And I think one important things to do in our part is we have to disseminate information to our coworkers then in what really the real situation, because sometimes our coworkers then they don't really have better information regarding this matter. So as a union rep, so it is our also duty to tell them that this is the real situation, the real score. So all you have to do is also be united, and of course we will win it.
And having this big group is also another way to try and like get out, or not try, we are getting out from under the media propaganda effect, because they of course have a much larger group they can speak to,
Yeah.
but it's very shallow because it's not personal. Everyone kind of knows that the newspaper and the television is essentially advertising, but someone in my family was saying, you know, I'm on disability and I get more money than you're asking for. This just seems so fair. I don't understand. And I was able to just tell her, leveraging the fact that she knows me and we're related, it's because you're imagining this as a real contract negotiation. And me in the room, I'm telling you that it is a power game that is much bigger than just what we deserve or what we're asking for. This is an attempt to like break a labor movement, break a specific group of leaders, tell the public how it's going to be kind of thing. And so that's why. And so this, maybe she didn't completely follow or agree, but this was a chance for someone real to tell her their experience of being in the room instead of, you know, a pundit on television.
Because this has like a dramatic slow drip effect, you know, day after day it's coming, it's skewing your perceptions into certain directions and so on. You were telling me before we went live that ASI had this had a course for trúnaðarmenn in the labor unions, but Efling has decided to step away from that and is doing its own thing now. Can you tell me a little bit? Have you guys, all of you, been going to those classes?
Long before we have some kind of a NAMSKED for the union rep, and they did it for just 1 month. Like for example, in that month they have only 1 week, whole week for all the NAMSKED. But in our case now, we have some kind of new settings. Like in every month we have a 1 day NAMSKED for that until everything will be good.
Covered the basis.
We used to, because we're in ASI by way of Starfsgreinasambands Íslands, ASI has a school for teaching union reps. And we took it through there, and Reynaldo and I were in one of them, and it was like the Matrix. Can you fly a helicopter? I can now. Like they tried to give you all the rights of a union rep in 3 or 4 days. It was just an information overload, and I don't remember anything.
Was it a question of them not being willing to invest in? Did they want to do it quickly, you know, to save money? Or?
I mean, they used
Maybe.
like a third-party outsourced website for the course material. Didn't work very well. You couldn't message the teacher directly. It disappeared in the course material after you were done. It just felt very much kind of like a neoliberal project that ticked the boxes of teaching. And I remember even one of the teachers bullied or tried to bully me, that I was trying to ask questions about theory, like how do I get my colleague or my coworkers who are also in Efling to be more interested or to come and participate or something like this. That was not one of the topics. And so now we have taken the right to train union reps back inside of Efling. And even at ASI, we were meeting at the Efling headquarters. They just sent the teacher, so it's not that big of a change. And we had to pay per person to ASI, even though we already pay 100+ million kroner a year. So now we have it inside once a month, and we cover just a couple of topics. We had one today. Really good food. We've watched a couple of interesting documentaries, like 7:15.
Korter í sjö.
Yeah, we watched a Korter yfir sjö.
Yfir sjö.
And we watched a really good Belgian movie about solidarity and unions. Because not everyone who's a union rep is on the negotiating committee, we take a time each time to tell the reps how the negotiations are going. Today we learned about how going on strike works, what the rules are, and the timelines, and money, and all that kind of thing. And by having it every month, instead of when we took it, we had to wait a year for there to be enough people to trigger a class going. And then it was on Zoom, and we were like 5. And I had to organize. I was like, this is so lame. We've done it on Zoom. Let's go to Brewdog for Wings Wednesday, just so we can hang out and talk. Yeah. And so now, when we do it there, were we 60 today? Mm-hmm. Is that always more? Like today, there were 5 brand new union reps, so it has a much more like organic growing. We're seeing people that we like over and over. We can talk to union reps of other groups. They can, if we talk about, who's on the negotiation committee, and we all stand up, and then they can see who they could maybe talk to at lunch. Mm-hmm. We had really good food. Solveig was there, so we could talk to her. Board members were there, so they could be spoken with. So, like, the difference is so huge, and it has an actual radicalization possibility. You can bring more people in, connect them together, and make it so that there's much more information and connection flowing around, which is what's missing, in my opinion, in a lot of spaces around the world.
Yeah, probably one of the most important elements in all of this. Mm-hmm.
And one thing also is, if I'm going to compare it from last time, the absorption rate of understanding on the topic much better now compared to what we had, because we are not some kind of stress, because we have a lot of time. And then we can mingle a lot of people then, and then of course we have a lot of resources for the speakers. So it's really good.
And create solidarity and so on.
Was something connected probably to a previous conflict. One of the new changes in the office reorganization is that all of the heads of departments also need to have presentation skills, because now they are the ones who come and teach. So we'll have the person who, if you have problems reading your pay slip and you write to Efling as a member to get help, the head of that department is who comes and teaches us.
Yeah, exactly.
So he or she needs to have the skills of being able to present to a room. And someone we've had previous to the reorganization needed to come and do that for a big decision we had to vote on with lots of money, and he didn't have presentation skills. So we had to vote on something we didn't quite understand the details of because we couldn't get, and so because they are Efling employees, I didn't understand everything in the class and wanted some extra help. I was able to email afterwards with him. He said, just come in and we can have an hour time before work so we can go over it. It's like very convenient to have that and to follow up, and we get all of the class material emailed to us afterwards so that we can go back over it or translate it or send it to other members.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, I haven't unfortunately been able to attend any of the meetings since I have started with the union. However, I am always sent the class materials, and I can always email them and be like, hey, what does this mean? I'm doing them for self-study, you know what I mean? I have questions about this. And so it's not like some secret,
And we
are
even
keeping
get
you in the
history
loop.
lessons.
Yeah.
Like we got one a few times ago. I think it was in the rep class, where we learned about the changes in like the classes in Iceland, like when a middle class essentially came into being between just the working class and the capital class. How the percentage of the population has moved, when things were active, when there was a period of almost 10 years where we got yearly contracts and there were strikes almost every year over them. So like lots of good historical information that was definitely not part of the old.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more that this historical element is super important. It's just like the documentary you mentioned, Korter yfir sjö, like you see how it was back then, It really gives perspective on what it took to earn the rights and the position that the working classes have today.
And inspiration too.
Oh yes, wow, very inspiring indeed. One last thing I want to talk to you about. There's been a slight controversy from your economist, and Efling has laid out or been bringing attention to the fact that it is, on average, more expensive to live in Reykjavík for people who are especially on the renting market.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true for you guys? Like, are you paying a lot for housing?
Yeah, exactly. I am renting a house, and you can really see the real situation here. I, guys, you are also living here in Reykjavik, and you can see the real situation that it's really more expensive here compared to the regional areas.
Yeah, I mean, I've never lived in the regional areas of Iceland. I moved straight to Reykjavik, but I have looked on websites and compared the rents, and on average, it is much more expensive to live here. And I pay about 70% of my wages in rent, and that is true
That is
for
crazy.
many, many people in Efling, quite a few people in our negotiation committee.
Yep.
Um,
And that reminds me of something I was reminded to mention that I've forgotten so far. We paid Gallup Iceland to do a poll of our members, and we got more answers than any labor poll has ever gotten back. So because
Wow,
we
good.
didn't limit who it was sent to, like even our previous ones, we'd send to 2,000 or 3,000 members. This one was open to all 25,000 members, and we got almost 5,000 answers. So we were given a presentation of the answers on the contract negotiation committee. So we're not just taking like what our liver tells us. We know what the members of Efling have said. When my money runs out, what percentage am I paying in rent? Am I willing to go on strike? All these things. And then we can even see what the changes are from previous times, and then line them up with contract wins to see, how these sentiments have changed. And we know that a large percentage are paying tons of, way over 50% in their take home for rent. So I'm very fortunate in my housing situation, but it's mainly because of my spouse. If I was single, I would have to change everything about my living situation because I'm on an 80% job. So I get less than 300,000 kroner a month after tax. So I'd like to be able to live off of that.
You'll be paying like
Yeah.
60-70% for rent,
Yeah.
probably.
So but with the idea of the housing, while this is true, and we have the math to prove it, this is not because we want to be somehow arguing that people in the countryside should be paid less. We our goal we would have loved for all the unions to work together. We would have been able to ask for way more than we're asking for, and have gotten it, including changes in the government, rent breaks, tax changes, Barnabeiter for real, instead of this changes doesn't even kick in until 2024 when this short-term contract runs out. So this is more like every time you make an argument, these are kind of like spells being cast out into the air because the general public is going to decide if they think this strike is terrible and they hate us, or if this is like a moral thing to do that the bosses are being unfair to pay. And so we can't just endlessly say it's unfair that we're poor, pay us. Like it has to be built on like real issues. And so we've made they've claimed that we cannot be paid any more than anyone else. So our counter spell is showing how much more it costs to live in the capital for various things. And this is how we proceed forward with this demand as not being, insane or weird.
And we don't know this just through data or through a poll. We know this because we live it daily. We know this because we live it through our coworkers who talk to us about it, through our family members who talk to us about it. Like, there's not really a question of is it? It's what can we do about it?
The
an
idea
everyday
that it's
reality,
more
yeah.
expensive to live in the capital, like that, to me, that's been true everywhere I've
Yeah.
ever been,
That's
ever
what
in
we
the
call-
world.
Like
That's what they
some
call-
medical services are more expensive, and some consumer goods and so on
And
can be
for
more
example,
expensive,
aren't
but
the
when you take in the
mayors
rent.
of
yeah.
Reykjavik and Kopenhagen paid a lot more than the mayors of Akureyri? And so it's kind of like,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, and that is the fact, and that is the reality. And then they will saying that, oh, you are offering too much for your demands, but that is the reality. And we are not offending, we are not segregating the countryside people that they are you are much more less from us. No, what we wanted just is the reality that here in Reykjavik area we need much more higher
And
substantial amount.
the
for that.
bottom layer is what sets the foundation for everyone else.
Yeah.
So the moment we win a raise, especially when it's better than another contract signed, that becomes then the floor, because someone who has a doctorate degree is going to say, I don't want to be making the same as the person at Metro drive-through. That's not fair. And so, all the wages can be built up, and especially someone doing similar jobs being paid less, they immediately have the argument, I also want to be paid that much. So versus if you go down, then it becomes a race to see who can I find to pay the least, and then use that as the argument to drag everyone else with even a remotely similar job down to that level. And that's where the two of us moved away from.
Yeah. And we're both from America, and there's strong union movements there, but they have a lot less rights, I would say, and I don't want to move back there. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
And you're doing good stuff here. You're really helping with progressing the movement here, who has been in a quite a sorry state. And like with this housing issue, this was something that people had hoped that SGS, Waffer, and Efling would go together and speak to the government and have some mutual demands, to meet these issues.
Part of the reason, did you go to the SGS thing in Akureyri?
Yeah, last time.
So both of us voted for Vilhjálmur Birgisson to be the chair of SGS, and he won that seat with only 8 votes over the other person.
Wow.
And we were, the other unions had maybe 1 table each, and we had 6. We provide the majority of funding for SGS, almost 1 million kroner a year. So we heard a speech from him about housing, about the need for solidarity for the unions to stand together. And I was I believe these things. That's why I cast the vote. That's why I put his name on a piece of paper and recommended the other members of Efling to also vote for him. And this was a very optimistic time when I thought that we were going to have multiple labor leaders building a demand together and then standing together, and then instead it felt like one person ran ahead, Leroy Jenkins, and kind of left everyone else to then deal with this
fallout from that
blueprint that is now being used to trying to jam down our throats.
It really is a sad thing to see. But do you have a message for your fellow comrades in Efling and to the Icelandic working class?
Hvað erum við?
Alltaf! I love it. Thank you very much, guys. I wish you the best of luck, and to everybody in Efling and to the public at large in their struggle against Samtök atvinnulífsins, who are just plainly, they're alltaf frekir. They want too much for themselves. There's way more to go around that they could share, and they should.
Alvöru frekigeit.
Yeah. Best of luck, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.